Hey guys, I'm Francina Simone, and these are writing tips to improve your writing. This is the third video in the How to Write Romance series. Today's topic is how to write angst. Now, angst is the sexual buildup between two people that gets you so hot and bothered you'd do anything for that makeout scene. At least I would. These are a few tips on how to write angst. Step number 1. Have well-rounded characters. Now, there's already a video on how to write a strong love interest, so if you haven't caught it, please go watch it. I'll link it here. But to sum it up, all of your characters, especially your love interest, needs to have their own goals and purpose in life. If you don't have a strong character, then all of the angst goes out of the window and it turns into a whole bunch of cheesy rom-com lines. I love myself a cheesy rom-com, but I'd rather watch that rom-com than spend hours and hours reading it in a book. Step number 2, allow the readers to see them interact in meaningful and emotional ways outside of the romance. This is an extremely important part. Your characters have to interact with each other outside of the romance. That way, when we do get the romance, we see the difference between them and how it's cooking up. If it's romance all the time, it's not angsty. It's just overbearing. But if we see them interacting in emotional ways that have to do with whatever it is in the plot, if they're fighting aliens, fighting vampires, if they are vampires, fighting unicorns, it doesn't matter. Whatever their quest is, you've got to have them interact during the quest, and you've got to have them argue about things in the quest without the romance getting in the way. That way we can see them in their strong convictions, we can see them in their laughter and in their quirkiness, and we can fall in love with them. And when the romance does come up, it's even that more juicy. Step number 3, allow them to fight authentically. Also, allow them to have authentic pride and vulnerabilities. This really ties in with step number 2. When we see that, we're constantly being set back from the romance at hand, which adds to the angst. The reader wants to feel the romance. We want to be on the journey, and we want to feel the push and the pull. That means that they either have to fight, be vulnerable, or have prideful moments in authentic ways, not fake ways. Don't throw in fights for the sake of stalling the romance. That's very inauthentic, and the reader will spot that like Dorito stains on a brand new book. When they fight, we see them pushing away, and when they're vulnerable, we get the pull back into the romance. So you have to balance that equally, and the best way to do that is outside of the romance and in your normal plot. Step 4. This really all builds in together, but don't focus on the romance. It's the biggest mistake I see in books today. Romance always happens in subtle ways, and it creeps up on you. It doesn't happen in over-the-top dramatics or by someone constantly talking about it. If your friend is constantly telling you about their love life and how obsessed they are with someone, you begin to hate the person they're obsessed with, and you kind of start to hate them. Now, not focusing on the romance doesn't mean not to write it or not to put as much effort into it as you do your main plot. It means simply don't let it take over your main plot. And dear God, don't let your romance subplot become the reason why you have to write 3 books. Step number 5, resist your fantasies. Now, I completely understand it. When I wrote my first book, at the end of the day, it was a real shit book until I revised the fuck out of it. Resisting your fantasies also means resisting getting to the punchline before it's due. That means don't have your characters make out or hold hands or do the deed before it's really time for them to. You can't do it just because you want the sexual angst to pop off the page. That kills angst the most. Angst, just like anything sexy, it's about being subtle. So at the end of the day, make sure you have strong characters. Allow the reader to see them interact in meaningful ways. Allow them to fight and be vulnerable authentically outside of the romance plot. Which obviously leads into the key, don't focus on the romance. Focus on them and their relationship outside of the romance, and the romance will build itself. And of course, last but most important, resist fulfilling your fantasies. It's the biggest trap. We all fall into it. But you've got to pull yourself out and write the story that your characters deserve. On that note, I've got a book to get to, and you've got to start writing. But before you do, don't forget to subscribe. And if you have any comments or suggestions on what video I should do next, leave a comment down below or tweet me at Francina Simone.